You are all sacred beings. It's very important to realize that. There are profane beings and there are sacred beings. The word profane comes from fana, before the temple. It's those who stand outside the temple. And then those who enter the temple become sacred beings. And all of you who are here, who are on the spiritual path, have entered the temple. But the temple has many levels, many concentric circles. And the question is, how deeply into the temple do we wish to go? And to complete our journey inward, we must reach that holy of holies. That is the chamber of the Supreme Self. At any of the outer layers, there is still suffering. We are in the temple because we know that the only way out of the suffering of the profane world is to enter into the sacred dimension of our being. We know that. But how deeply into our sacred essence are we willing to go? That's the question that we each must ask. How deeply into the temple? Because at each level that you enter into the temple, you must let go more of your profane identity. More of the lower attachments, enjoyments, and diversions, so that you become able to withstand the power of the Supreme Presence. Only if you attain the utmost integrity and one-pointedness and devotion of soul will you be able to enter the Holy of Holies. And otherwise, the ego will spit you out. Not God, but the ego. And it will divert because it will not be able to withstand the power of the truth, of the light, and the purity of love that you will find in the innermost core of the temple. And so at the first level, yes, the body is our temple. And then there is another level where we realize the mind is our temple, the personality, the ego. But we have to go deeper within, beyond those levels, and let the personal levels of our being drop away in order to get to the transpersonal nucleus, the core, the self of our self. And to reach that supreme self requires the most intense purity and intensity of desire. And that's what we're doing when we're meditating. And if we have that desire to find out the ultimate truth of who we are and to achieve union with the supreme self that is within us, that is our essence, then that will be given. But we must be prepared to melt into that supreme presence, to realize our oneness. It's not temporary. It's not like we're going to touch into that and then come back into the profane world and use that and appropriate that for the ego. Until that egoic agenda of using God rather than of surrendering to God has been purified, we cannot even get close to that inner sanctum. And so are we willing to make that surrender, to consecrate our lives to the Supreme Being, to consecrate the mind, to give the mind over so that your own mind becomes the Holy of Holies, becomes the space in which the Supreme Presence manifests, and so that your life is moved by that supreme love, truth, generosity, compassion, joy, all of those qualities that are represented by the term God. Everything included in what Buddha taught as our true Buddha nature. rather than by the egoic mind that wants to manipulate and control and to be in collusion with the profane other. And so until there has been a disconnect from the profane identity and a complete reunion with the sacred identity that is ultimately in union already with the Supreme Being, because you are that. Until you are ready to live in the truth of that realization, then there will continue to be suffering and vacillation and oscillation and a lack of peace. But the moment that that desire is wholehearted, literally the doors of the temple will open and you will gain access to everything that you have been seeking in life. The heart's desire will be satisfied. And it can only be satisfied by this attainment of the inner core of our being. And the only question is when. When do we wish to achieve this? And it can only be done in the now. And every moment that we put it off and say, I'll do it later, I'm not ready yet, we create a sanskara of not now. And then that becomes our enemy, that we have created a distancing from the very thing that we desire. And so let us meditate with the intention that now is the eternal moment for the moth to dive into the supreme flame and melt into the infinite, eternal self.